I'm Trelawney and this is Andrew, and we're back to talk about Married at First Sight. How are you today, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thanks, Trelawney. Yourself?
Yes, very good, thank you. So, last night we had quite an exciting episode because we had the girls' day and the boys' day. And what added the kind of extra twist to it was that couples that had left the experiment came back. So, girls that left the experiment arrived back at the girls' day, boys that left the experiment arrived back at the boys' day. So it was a bit of a reunion, really, and everybody was encouraged to tell their truths and to be brutally honest about what they thought about each other's relationships. It was quite an interesting episode. But we'll have a look at a couple of the couples and see what we think in terms of what happened last night and what led up to that. Yep. So
Yeah.
let's start with Sasha and Ross. Now, I thought Sasha and Ross seemed like a really well-matched couple. And last night, we actually saw that the group really, really believe in them. And they seem to feel they're the strongest couple and they've got the most potential. Ross spoke about Sasha meeting his daughter. He thought that was the best thing that ever happened. He was so moved by it, the fact that they had a bond instantly. But Sasha was still just seeming to feel a little bit distanced from the whole thing and much more unsure. So what's your feelings about the way things have developed between these two?
I think they do have a strong connection. I really do. I think they align quite well. I think Sasha at first, as we've talked about before, was very reserved and didn't want to move the relationship forward. She wanted it to progress naturally, which actually it has done. And things were moving great until obviously Sasha and Ross had that disagreement where I think part of Ross's frustration is his communication at times, because obviously it's a little bit more difficult for him to get his point across. So you can understand that. And obviously throwing the wedding ring and having a big ding dong without the support of family really highlighted it to Sasha. And obviously up until that point, Manchester was the place they were moving to. Now that's kind of a little bit up in the air. There's a lot of pressure. And we often see this in relationships, in what we do, pressure from families sort of trying to push them a certain way, as opposed to letting them be themselves and follow a relationship or whatever, whether it's work or relationship. Family can sometimes play a massive part in derailing that. And at the minute, both Sasha and Ross are very into each other. Yes, I do think at the minute they feel they love each other, and that could be very much true. You know, certainly Ross introducing Sasha to Blue, his daughter, was a massive step for him and beautiful to watch. But I think the doubts that are starting to creep in aren't their own doubts. It's letting outside noise affect their decision making, and that can be really dangerous because they could miss out on something that's incredibly special. So yeah, I think every couple has arguments. They want the support of the family, but hopefully they can find some sort of compromise in and around the living situation so that they can continue the relationship once they move forward outside the experiment. And I think that's Sasha's fears right now. And obviously that outside pressure.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult when families get involved because obviously you want your partner to treat your family well and your family to treat your partner well. But I don't necessarily think it should go too much deeper than that because, you know, just because somebody's a member of your family, they don't really know what you need, what you want, and what works for you. And I think that there's so much pressure. Obviously, there's the extreme in terms of arranged marriages where the family literally choose who you're going to spend the rest of your life with, which sometimes works and sometimes is a complete and utter nightmare. And there's just times where families have their own prejudice, but they have their own needs and wants, their own agendas. So I think it's really difficult as an adult to let too much family opinion influence your relationships. Do you?
I do, yeah. And I think families need to actually stop and think a little bit, because I think it was Sasha's dad who turned around and said, nobody knows my daughter better than me. She's my daughter. She's this. What he forgets is, as an adult woman, he probably only knows a third of what she does. The other 2/3, she isn't going to divulge. So he perhaps doesn't know her as well as he thinks he does. And we have to think that we can control our children, however old they are, by what we say and how we say it. And we have to be mindful that we don't do that and we allow them to fly and be themselves. And I think the other thing with Sasha, and I know we spoke about this, I think she's getting to that stage of fear of success. And the fear of success means that if she follows this truly through to the end, then life has got to change. You know, people have to move, people have to be involved in each other's family lives. And that means sharing what they've always had to themselves. And that can be a problem as well, where people just take a step back, being very nervous about suddenly taking that step. So fear of failure is something that runs, but fear of success can be actually more powerful. So, you know, hopefully the experts will speak to them, allow them to calm themselves and focus and realize actually this is worth pursuing and it is worth making those adjustments. And of course, nothing's forever. You know, if they move and, you know, that isn't the right move or it's not the right place, then it's not final. We can still evolve and change and move to different places. So hopefully they sort of take a breath, step back and see that actually they're in a good place. Now it's just working on logistics.
Yeah, I think it's a very ego-driven overstep to try and control your adult children in terms of their
Yes.
relationships. I think you have to let them, I mean, obviously, if they're in an abusive or a dangerous situation, that's a different thing. But if it's just your personal preference, particularly if your child decides that they're going to come out as, let's say, not straight, and you just need to be completely accepting, I think, of whatever makes them happy, as long as they're safe and as long as they're being protected. And unfortunately,
I agree.
if they do enter negative situations, there's again only so much you can do. But the best thing you can do is just be super supportive and keep making them feel like they deserve more, rather than kind of going in too hard, because it just doesn't work. It just makes them more isolated, doesn't it? If they think that you're continually giving them a hard time and disapproving. It's a difficult one, but yeah.
Well, it can have the opposite effect. What you end up doing is your kids don't come and talk to you. They don't trust you with the information because they know that you're going to go against it. So you can isolate your child even more by doing that. So it's important that we do. And of course, if nobody ever let go of the bike, none of us would be able to ride it. You know, sometimes we've got to let our kids fall in order for them to learn, and that's part of life, unfortunately. And you know, but it's an important part of life. So you know, sometimes saying less is important. Yes, you can give your view saying you'll miss somebody, but you don't turn around and say, "I definitely don't want you to move. You have to stay here." That's coercive behaviour, whether that's whatever level.
Yeah, very toxic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, we all want our children to stay. Well, most of us, I do, want our children to stay with us forever. But you just can't. You just can't. Otherwise, you create very isolated adult children with a lack of self-confidence, with a lack of self-belief, with a lack of identity, which isn't going to help them at all. So yeah, it's a difficult one. But I say set your boundaries with family interference quite tight.
Yes, I agree.
So let's have a think about Polly and Adam. So Polly went to the girls' day feeling as though she was going to shake off all the stress of the last few days and she was just going to have fun. But the girls ended up confronting her in a way about the fact that they feel that she's really changed. She's losing herself. One of them pointed out that Adam's possibly not sleeping with her because he doesn't see a future for the relationship. And this is really damaging for her emotionally. They want her back to herself. They want her to remember that she was a confident, vibrant woman when she came in. Polly seems to have been acknowledging that, but desperately not wanting to let go, as though it's a point that she needs to prove now that he will fall in love with her and he will find her attractive. On the other hand, Adam with the boys was being told, well, he actually said to them, first of all, she's trying to turn me into her perfect idea of a man. And the boys were saying, well, you can't do that. That's not authentically you. You won't be yourself. And he seemed to agree. So things were not going well. How do you feel about the way that things have led to this moment?
You know what? I think it's a real shame for Polly and Adam because, you know, Adam's always been honest from the beginning. They perhaps weren't connected on that physicality normal what they're going for. But, you know, certainly for Polly, she sort of, Adam ticked a lot of her boxes. I think one of the biggest problems is intimacy. Without intimacy in a relationship, then relationships struggle to move forward. And it's been a fair bit of time now. It feels like it's slipped into a friendship couple, and I do think they got on really well. It's not toxic. It's not spectacularly imploded like some of the other couples. it's just a gradual drifting. I think the point for me when things changed is Adam had been trying and trying from each commitment ceremony, listening to what the experts said, trying to address his behaviour and become a little bit more PDA. But the problem is, I think Polly kept pushing, and then at home stays, Adam did lose his temper, and they had a big argument. And it was a case of Adam saying, "Look, everything's about you. We have whatever you want. I have to try and provide. Whatever you need, I have to try and give. And you've not once asked me what I need, how this is sitting with me, what makes me feel comfortable in a relationship." And that was a massive point. And Polly kept going back, and Adam just said, "Look, you're a grown adult." He said, "Apologizing's easy. It shouldn't take 2 days to apologize for bad behavior." And that's true. Sometimes our own stubbornness can get in the way, where we think if we back down, then we somehow lose face. We don't. If you know you've done something wrong, we all do it. There's nothing wrong with saying, "Look, you know what? I had a bad day. I'm really sorry. Look, let me make it up to you. I'll cook us something nice, or we'll go," or even just, it can just be an apology. It's not always a grand gesture. Those little things of letting people know that if somebody does something wrong, they apologize. That's important. Otherwise, you can start to feel like you're going mad and start to think, "Well, is this me? Am I doing it?" And, again, not a healthy situation to be in. From everybody else jumping in, again, it's outside noise. Sometimes you've got to listen to your own views. And if Polly's influenced because everybody else says that, and of course, Polly has been involved in most arguments of couples as well. She's always very opinionated. So perhaps there's a point of it where people are saying things to her just to maybe think, "Well, you've said this about our relationship. You've got involved here. Maybe this is time for us to give a bit of karma." So again, I would encourage both of them to step back and look at their own feelings. And from Adam's point of view, I think his mate at homestay did turn around and say, she's not been nasty to you there. You're overreacting. So again, we see how positive influence our friends can be and how negative they can be. And that's really dangerous. I was really pleased with what he said, because I thought, actually, Polly hasn't done anything wrong here. I think it's just an overflow from what's been before. And they've either got to recenter or go the separate ways really now. But yeah.
Do you think if somebody's not interested really in physical intimacy, I don't think there's any point in ever trying to force it, is there? I mean, I think it does just really erode somebody's confidence.
Yeah. I think you've got to accept in life, and there's nothing wrong with this, that at times, for whatever reason, people aren't going to naturally find you attractive. And I don't care if you're the most beautiful or handsome man in the world, there is people who will not find you attractive. Well, I know we'll move on to them, but that's probably not dissimilar with Luke and Amy. But you look at it, and that's fine. It's okay. It's not personal. Accept that happens and move forward, but move away from it, because, as you say, being in that environment too long where somebody doesn't find you attractive, they're trying to find a way to get through it, arguably it's not going to work now. And there's a time to say, "Look, we're going to be friends." And there's nothing wrong with saying, "Let's be friends." And it might develop further down the line when you remove the pressure. But at the minute, the pressure's building, and Adam's stepping further back, Polly's stepping further forward, and it's a problem.
Yeah. And I will say, I think when you're close friends, or people that have got to know you quite well in a short space of time, so they've seen you, when they say that you're shrinking and that you're losing yourself, I think you do have to listen.
Yes.
Because I always think that often people don't say when they see somebody in a relationship that's really kind of destroying their confidence and self-esteem. And we see it many times with our friends and family members when someone's changing and losing themselves, and people are too polite to say anything, or they just feel it's not my place. So I think when someone does say that to you, it's definitely worth at least thinking about whether there's any truth in that, because sometimes it takes a lot to kind of say to burst someone's bubble. And I felt the girls were trying to do it out of the best intentions actually last night. So yeah, I always think that if the group who knows you well or has got to know you well say to you, "You're really changing within this relationship," always just think about that, because they're usually right. And if you're changing, you're losing yourself, then ask yourself why. It might not be your partner's fault, it might be you who've put so such high expectations upon yourself. You're trying to be somebody you're not, and perhaps your partner would accept your authentic self anyway. But I think you need to listen.
You know what? If somebody doesn't accept you as your authentic self, it is quite simple. They're not for you.
Mm.
It really is that simple. They've got to like, and I forget who said it on the show, and it's very true. You've got to like all aspects of somebody, not just the good sides. We've all got positives, negatives. Hopefully all of our positives outweigh negatives, but we're going to have a few little negatives within there. So, it's accepting it and loving them for who they are as a whole, not cherry picking the bits you like from them, cherry picking the bits you like from somebody else, and almost trying to design this perfect woman or this perfect man. I'm afraid to say they don't exist, but I'm also glad to back that up. That's the beauty of relationships. It's what makes relationships work, having those little differences. So, there is no such thing as perfect. In fact, perfect is imperfection for me.
So I talk about this a lot within my coaching sessions, that you're never going to find the perfect partner. We're not perfect and nobody else is perfect. So I always say to people, imagine how overwhelming it would be if you went into a new relationship and somebody expected you to be perfect. You will have to make compromises and there will be things you don't like, but you have to decide whether the things you do like and the way the person makes you feel and treats you is worth kind of accepting. That not everything is going to be the way you want it, but you love this person, you care about this person, so it's fine. You're going to live with that. You can communicate what you don't like, of course, and you can try and work through those things. You just can't expect anybody to be perfect.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a time where all people talked about was red flags, and thank goodness that now beige flags gets brought in and other things, because it's important that, sometimes what you feel is a red flag. Don't get me wrong, certain things are complete red flags and you wouldn't go near somebody. Yeah. But if it's more just what they do or habits or whatever, they're not. And actually they can become quite endearing at times. And you can, it's loving the bits that you didn't think you could love that actually leads to long-term relationships lasting, for a very long time, as opposed to just, as we said, cherry picking just doesn't work. You can't cherry pick bits from people. We're all who we are, and we're all, perfect in our own right to a degree. So, you just got to accept somebody for who they are and every aspect of them.
Yeah. I think most people that I've spoken to that really struggle to find love say to me, I know exactly what I want. And that's the problem. It's good to know what you want, and it's good to have boundaries and all of these things. But if you feel like I know exactly what I want, it's like going into a showroom and telling them, I want you to make the car that I want because I know exactly what I want. They can do that, but nature doesn't work like that. So.
Oh, exactly. I agree completely.
Okay. So, Luke and Amy.
Yes.
Luke had a bit of a hard time from the boys last night in terms of he was told that it didn't seem as though he was making Amy happy. And he asked, okay, everybody. And he did this. He wasn't doing it in a kind of a stroppy defensive way. But he said, okay, everybody, anyone who thinks I'm not making Amy happy, please could you raise your hand? And the hands all started raising around the table and his face fell. And he said, look, I really want this woman and I really, really want her to want me. So I'm not going to give up. Meanwhile, Amy was saying that the biggest problem is that she keeps uncovering lies and she just doesn't feel that trust can exist when this keeps happening. So how do you feel these two have been doing recently leading to this point?
Explosively bad, I think. You know what? It's funny because when they first got matched up, I said, what a beautiful couple, stunning couple together, everything else, which I guess takes us back to actually beauty is the first bit. It's what lurks beneath. You know what? I think there's a little bit of communication issues where, Amy and Luke seems to constantly put his foot in it with what he says. I mean, and always within a short space of time turns every conversation to something sexual. Well, that's not what somebody wants really to hear all the time. Oh, really off-putting, yeah. And you could see as soon as he does it, Amy's face just gets the ick and she thinks, I'm not interested in this conversation. And rightly so. You don't need to talk about sex all the time to have a healthy sexual relationship. That's something you do. And of course, he tends to do it when the camera's around, is what Amy said. So it sort of talks a gameplay. And you know what? You just want to grab him and say, Luke, just tell the truth. Because the point's what he's lying about, like the picture on his fridge. It was a picture. He liked the picture of himself. He was with somebody else. That's fine. We've all got past. We've all got history. We've all been in other relationships. He cut it off. That's his point of preference. The other person off lied saying it was a man, then lied saying it was just a nobody. And by the time there is no truth to be found there, then every single point that he says now might be true, might be not. But Amy's first initial thought is, "You're lying to me again." And over and over again, when they had homestay and he met her friends, chucked his wedding ring down, said, "This marriage is over. I am single now," because he didn't like the questioning and what they were asking him. And actually, it was a fair question. He lied about his butler in the buff job. He could have said at the beginning, "I do this, but I've come into this marriage. That's something I won't be doing moving forward." Again, from where he's been to where he's going, that's reasonable. He didn't have a reason not to do it before. But it's the constant line, I think, that has now really picked away at Amy. And, I think, to be fair, I think he's always felt that he is a very good looking man. He looks after himself, and that's enough. Amy wants more. When her and Adam were together, Adam was getting up, making a coffee, doing a breakfast, these little things that make such a difference. And I was quite surprised that obviously Luke had done nothing of that, apart from when the cameras are there, he'll make her a drink. And again, that's when you start to think, well, are you game playing here? Is this just to get a little bit of exposure? So yeah, I can't see that going anywhere positive, if I'm honest now. I'd be amazed if it did. And Luke's desperate to stay in there and is trying different angles, but I think their personalities do not align. And that's why when we talk to, the people we talk to about being open and sort of seeing beyond just the looks and going a little bit deeper beneath the surface, that is where connections are made. And if you don't have those alignments in your core values, then that relationship will never succeed. And I actually don't think that they're aligned. I think, yes, beautiful couple, but beneath the surface, I think there's a lot of issues.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, it shines a light on the whole thing about, well, I want him to look like this, or I want her to look like that. Of course, you can have preferences. Of course, you want to fancy someone, but the looks only keep you kind of in for a very short time if there's no connection.
Yeah, agree completely.
People pleaser, or do you think it's just manipulation to stay in the show?
I think it's a people pleaser as well. I think whoever he's talking to will say what he feels they want to hear. That's very dangerous if you're not true to yourself, because if you're speaking to 10 people with 10 different opinions, you become quite unconvincing in anything you say. And I think he's been a victim of that hugely. Yes. So people pleaser, yes, I think he'd like to stay on the show, but I think the main thing that Luke likes is he likes to be liked by all. And that's just it just doesn't happen. People aren't going to connect with everybody on every level. And if you become everything to everyone, you become a mismatched jigsaw puzzle that doesn't really have any sort of consistency with it. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame for Luke, but hopefully he'll learn from it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's about it for us for this session. So things are kind of heading towards the end now. Do you have a prediction for two couples that you think are going to make it right to the end?
Well, I think Sasha and Ross will.
Yeah.
I was thinking Polly and Adam might actually up until last night, so I'm not quite sure. Obviously, we've had a few step by the wayside. And also, and I've forgotten the name now. I'll say Sasha and Ross.
Sasha and Ross are your number one.
Number one. Who's your pick?
I'd say Sasha and Ross as well, because I can't see them. I think they have a real fondness for each other, a real connection that goes a bit deeper.
Yeah.
The kind of physical attraction. And as you say, I think if they learn to stand on their own 2 feet and make their own decisions independently, certainly the group, and I think the reason I feel like this is because the group, who are highly critical of everybody and spend so much time together, truly believe in them. And I don't
Yeah.
they, they don't kind of give grace very easily, do they? So I think
Yeah.
you must really feel their connection when you're around them.
Yeah, well, I think they got criticised for not being involved in the group enough, and I can't fault them enough for that. I think
Mm,
they decided to take a step back from the drama and focus on the relationships, and actually we're seeing how that benefits by not being involved in everybody else's noise and just focusing on your own. It puts you in a far stronger position.
yeah, yeah. They're definitely my favourites for
Yeah.
making it to the end and beyond. So
Yes, I think so.
we'll speak again next week. And well, do you think will we've seen the final show by next week? How many more shows have we got left?
I can't remember. I think we're not far off actually, so it
Not
might
far
be a
off, so
bit of a
maybe we'll
story. Yeah.
be either at the end or near close to the end next week.
Yes, where
All
it'll all
right.
unravel and we'll have all the answers to what's all the questions really.
Yes, yeah. All right. Well, great to speak to you as always. And
Yes, you
I
too.
look forward to speaking to you next week.
Yeah, no problem. I'll see you then.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.